The data is so starky and the impact is so real that U.S. Surgeon Murthy declared gun violence as a national health crisis in 2024. It's a national issue, but don't make a mistake about it. It's also happening here in the city of Cleveland and other large cities. In Ohio, in 2023, approximately 1,800 firearm deaths occurred with nearly 600 homicides and almost 600 more people shot and wounded. Cuyahoga County has the highest rate of gun-related deaths in Ohio in 2021. In Cuyahoga County in 2021, 80% of the homicide victims were male, and nearly 86% were black. Cleveland has been in the top 10 for homicides for nearly a decade. Between 2019 and 2024, Cleveland had 953 homicides, with over 86% of those victims are black. So when you talk about 953, 825 blacks were killed due to gun violence. Of that same number in that same year span, 2019 to 2022, a firearm killed 756 victims. We need to do something about this. In Cleveland, 2023, there were over 102 emergency room visits per 100,000 residents due to gunshot wounds, predominantly affecting black males ages 18 to 24. Nationally, in 2022, black males 15 to 34 were 2% of the population, accounting for 34% of all gun homicides. In 2022, black males between 15 to 34 were 2% of the state population, but accounted for 41% of all gun homicides, 30 times higher than white males in the same group. This declaration reflects the growing concern among the city officials, public health experts, and community leaders over the alarming rise in gun-related incidents and mobilizing resources in the recent years. By classifying gun violence as a public health crisis, Cleveland aims to mobilize resources and partnerships across various sectors, including law enforcement, healthcare, education, and community organizations to develop a comprehensive and proactive strategy to address this issue. The declaration intended to elevate the issues of urgency, encourage and coordinated response across public health and safety agencies and community organizations, and bring additional resources to prevention and intervention efforts. Like I said, from 2019 to 2024, we've had lost 953 Clevelanders to gun violence. 825 of those were black. Now I will turn it over to Council President for some words for him to share as well.
Thank you, Councilman Starr, and I'm proud to be here with Councilman Starr to lead this effort of eradicating gun violence in our community. Pretty simple. Gun violence is a public health crisis. Violence in this community is a public health crisis. The reason that we are making this declaration, we have already, through past work with a lot of stakeholders, identified this as a public health crisis. But now we want to make sure that we continue to put the effort, and as Councilman Starr said, make this declaratory statement about this being a public health crisis. He gave the numbers. I won't repeat them. More than 85% black males. Anywhere else that a specific population is impacted by any kind of crisis, whether it be health or whether it be anything else, there will be a tremendous amount of resources to do three things. One is identify the source. Identify the source of what is causing some of this hurt and pain in our community. Number two, isolate the source. Make sure that we isolate the problem and eradicate the problem by isolating it and making sure that we hold those bad actors that do this accountable. And then finally, as we did with COVID or any other public health crisis, vaccinate and make sure that we do the prevention necessary to make sure that others are not affected by the crisis at hand. So we're going to work with partners like Maisha Crow and others. And the reason that this is important is because we know that the weather has broke. Cleveland officially ends winter May the 1st. And now we're going to start to see an uptick of people interacting with each other, an uptick in nuisance and other kind of crime. So we want to get ahead of this. So I commend Councilman Starr for really taking this issue on and working closely with us in order to make sure that we come up with the solutions necessary to deal with this. Ladies and gentlemen, hurt people hurt people. Statistics show clearly that a person that is a victim of a gunshot wound within 5 years will either be shot again or they would shoot someone. We want to approach this from a scientific approach. We want to make sure that we have the partners at the table. And once again, we're not getting help from Washington. They're going to cut a lot of programs like the Peacemakers Alliance. So this is going to be a clarion call to the community to make sure that we invest in the programs that are proven to solve the problem and to make sure that we approach this in a collaborative and scientific way. So Councilman Starr, Council is going to stand ready with you to work with you. We know we have the Dean with us today, Councilman Mike Polensek, the Chair of Public Safety. Also have other council members with us, Kevin Bishop, Ward 2, Union Miles area, Councilman Anthony Hairston in the South Collinwood and Glenville area, and Councilman Danny Kelly, who is also with us today from the West Boulevard area. We all care so much about this issue. When you have to go and deal with the families who have dealt with these tragedies, it is probably the most hurtful thing that you can experience in this job. To watch young people, when you go into a room and say, how many of you have experienced someone who have been killed or shot, and all the hands go up. This is a community call to action in order to try to address this in a way that we would address any other public health crisis. Thank you all. Cleveland City Council stands ready to work with everyone in order to eradicate this scourge on our community. Thank you so much.
What do you tell people that may have said, I've heard all this before? How do you get to the root of the problem? The people with the guns that fire at will. I was just on Talbert Avenue in Lee Harbor neighborhood, and they're firing at will. They don't care, obviously. I've seen ring video where they're just firing the guns off and people are scared.
Oh, I got you to answer that question. I got one more speaker. We got to have a community activist, Maisha Watkins from Cleveland Peacemaker Alliance, and then we'll go straight into questions, and that'll be the first question we answer. Ms. Maisha.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maisha Watkins. I'm the Executive Director of Cleveland Peacemakers. And I want to start by saying that on June 24th of 2024, my cousin was murdered in the city of Cleveland. And like the work of Cleveland Peacemakers, when we received the phone call, I alerted my team and told them that we needed to meet at the hospital to do the work that we do every day. But on today, it was for my family. Prior to that incident, you have the feelings and emotions of working with people who have been impacted by gun violence. But when your personal life and your professional work become one, the emotions are different. A survivor of gun violence is not just the person who lost their loved one, but the people that are the most impacted by this disease of violence. Too often we look at the problems that has continued to impact our community from generation to generation and continue to blame the people. I think when we acknowledge gun violence as being a public health crisis, we understand that from several different lenses we have to look at this problem. It is not just the people and the place or the underinvestment. It's calling out people to help be accountable for what the value of people and neighborhood means to them. When we think about Ward 5 and we think about the median income being $13,000 and we think about the number of violence that happens there, we have to think about the root causes. Why is someone choosing to shoot and or kill? It's not that someone woke up and said, I just want to be violent and I want to be a criminal. There are unmet needs that put people at risk of choosing between bad and worse. And too often, media will tell a story about who this person was and not even knowing them. It's not saying that we should not hold people accountable, but it's also talking about what does it look like to address the root causes of violence. If I was a 13-year-old in the city of Cleveland and I did not have food, if I go to the corner store to steal my favorite chips, which are hot fries, and get something to drink, now I'm a criminal. But the reality was that I was just hungry. How do we look at people as a whole person and not just an isolated problem of a lifestyle of violence and crime that continues to label them as not being valuable? There's no one way to address this, but incarceration is not it. We continue to put people into systems that are impacted by the disease of violence and hope that it's enough restoration happening in there to bring them back to a community where nothing has been done. When we address this as a public health crisis, it means that everybody from every seat, including you all with the cameras, that we have to create the narrative about the real problem that's going on in our community. It's not just that bad people are doing bad things, but people that have unmet needs and resources are doing things that they need to do to survive and thrive, and unfortunately, it impacts all of us. So how do we ask, what do you need, instead of what have you done, so that we can really hold everybody accountable? Those who are listening, those who are watching, those who believe that this is not their problem. Gun violence, one homicide costs taxpayers $1 million. So for the people who's recording and for the people who are impacted, a non-fatal shooting costs taxpayers $1.6 million. In order to address this disease of violence in the city of Cleveland, it will cost us $10 million per year. And I know those who control budgets are saying, well, where will we take this from? If we just save one life due to violence, that's $1 million that goes back into our community. So I just want to say thank you, Councilman Starr and Council President.
Good job.
Thank you. Also, making sure you understand we do have Cuyahoga County Councilman Michael Hauser here today to support this initiative. We also have Representative Ms. Diana from the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Office, because we're starting to do the work. So when we start talking about questions on what to do, you got to be able to meet people where they are at. It's a shame that you can be able to get a gun in the city of Cleveland before you can get a meal. And whether you're 10 years old, whether you're 13 years old, whether you're 20 years old, this is the real problem. We all stroll on social media. This weekend, I seen a car full of young people riding around, showing off all their guns in their car, extended clips, magazines, and they out here with guns that you can go to war with. They will have those and don't even know how to use them. So what we have to do is say, you know what? Let's stop just saying we're going to address this issue. Let's stop saying that crime is down, because at the end of the day, that number is never zero. Right now, we need to all work together, come up with a comprehensive plan and strategy to make sure we address gun violence. I'm tired of going to funerals. I've been burying children for the last 16 years as an activist. Enough is enough. Resources need to work together, and we need to show when government come together how we can make things happen and change. Questions, anyone?
Well, what do you tell people who may have heard all of this before, and how do you change the mindset of someone who is willing to just go out and shoot?
So the mindset, the way we start off with this initiative, you have to make sure you get the actual programs. Why do people want to use a gun? Well, why are people living in neighborhoods where they are starving and they live in survival mode? There's no rules when you live in survival mode. So we need to be addressing the root causes of violence. We need to make sure we got all the resources necessary. It should not be I have to choose between a meal or rather housing before I use a gun to rob somebody and take something from them. You got to make sure we get to the root cause. We need to start as early as in primary grade schools to be able to work with our young people so they won't grow up. Then we also got to address the educational system. There should not be a system data showing that 78% of our kids are graduating high school, but only 26% of them are prepared for workforce, military, education, or post-secondary. That is a problem. We should not be having our young kids in the 3rd grade where 80% of them are advancing to 4th grade, but only 33% of them are proficient in English language arts or anything. We're passing them along, and you get what you get. What you get is what you have shown. Meaning, if I'm going to graduate and it said I'm qualified to get a degree because I got a high school diploma, I'm qualified for a job because I got a high school diploma, but look at the fact, I can't read or do write, I can't do math, I can't do nothing because I didn't learn it in 3rd grade and I didn't learn it in 12th grade. So we gotta really, really work together to address those issues.
If I could add to that, to what the councilman's saying, consistency and reprioritizing what the focus is. He gave the numbers, 85% victims and perpetrators of most of the violent crime in this city are African-American males. So what we have to do is constantly, consistently remind everyone why this is so important. As I stated to you earlier, this time of year, coming towards the end of school year, the weather is now starting to get better. This is the time that we start to see an uptick in some of these violent activities that happen. And oftentimes these disputes turn into conflicts that continue to spin out of control throughout the summer. So we're not coming here with a panacea today. We're not coming here with a new idea, a new program. We're trying to realign, redesign, repurpose, and refocus what we need to do. Because at the end of the day, what Councilman is saying is right. We have a lot of new people, a lot of new leaders in a lot of different institutions. I've had about 4 conversations with corporate leaders that they want to put in and be helpful with this as well, with their presence and their presence. And when I say that, I mean their presence by their institutional knowledge and what they can do to bring some answers and help us to look at things operationally or how we can bring these groups together, as well as some gifts and helping groups like Maisha Crow and other things. So this is a call to action. This is a timely announcement, and this is something that we're basically putting the band back together in order to be able to drive the crime down in this city and send a message to all of these folks that are bad actors in this city, that Cleveland City Council is going to come at this from a comprehensive standpoint, because there is also a law enforcement component of this. Because just as much as we want to have a good defense with prevention and intervention and prevent the shootings, we also encourage our law enforcement partners to have a good offense and make sure that we hold those bad actors accountable.
Do you have a sense yet of the picture of federal grants for community anti-violence? There's been some discussion about whether the DOJ is going to cut those. Do you have a picture yet of what it looks like on the ground?
So the same, to answer your question, Nick, it's the same as for all of us. We don't know. Every day you hear about new change, executive order, cuts here, but what we have to do is come together and figure out with all of our resources, what can we do? Like Council President mentioned, how do we get the private sector to help invest as well? How do we make sure that you can be able to travel downtown and enjoy a basketball game or enjoy a football game or a baseball game without worrying about somebody trying to jack you for your car, rob you? This is something that we're living in. So we got to deal with perception versus reality, and reality is gun violence is a public health crisis in the city of Cleveland.
And we do have an example, if we could, with
Yep.
Ms. Crow, who actually did have funding that was cut from a well-tested program.
Yep.
So I would say to your point that the Department of Justice, under the new administration, gun violence prevention, also known as community violence intervention work, have been under attack since he got in. He dismantled the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention on day 2. As of now, 65 CVI organizations across the country their grants have been terminated. That's 48 cities and 25 states, with a total of $154 million total awarded, with 40 million being unspent. Cleveland Peacemakers Alliance had $1.7 million of the $2 million grant that was left unspent. So the important thing that we should do is that we should amplify the body of CVI, which is community violence intervention, that puts dollars into community-based organizations that employ young people and adults who are the most proximate to the pain, who have lived and shared experiences, and who are able to stop the issue before it happens. But in order to do that, it's not community work. I mean, it's community work, it's not community service, and stuff like that needs to be invested.
How much of those grants make up the organization and your budget? Like how crucial are those?
So I would say the grant that we have provided support for our hospital work. It covers salary, it covers resources. So last month, I think we paid $6,000 for families who were impacted by communities for funeral support, providing meals, providing parking passes. But for Brenda Glass Trauma Recovery Center, she had to close down a safe house, she had to forgo her own salary, and she had to let go of staff. So it really hurts the people and the community, because thoughts and prayers are sufficient, but it's not enough when you are asking people to not retaliate or to reduce revictimization.
Yes, we have time for about 2 more questions.
I have a question about car break-ins, and there was video over the weekend where teenagers were breaking into cars, dancing in front of the Ring camera, almost pouring salt into a wound. Is there anything that can be done on the city level to increase penalties and enforcement for stuff like that?
So from the council's seat at the table, from the legislative branch, I have the honor of serving on Public Safety Committee and working with our dean, Mike Polenzek, to look at different policies and see what things have been implemented to make sure we be preventative of those measures. So we have to be thoughtful, but we also have to think of ways to be able to address those issues. And the underlining is, why do they think it's okay to do this? Then you also want to understand is what has actually happened once they get caught. Do we really put them in programs to make sure we change their mindset, or do we just lock them up and they don't get no resources or no tools to be able to change their mind? So we have to be thoughtful. We have to work together and figure out which policies we need to really look at and change and make as far as making amendments.
And just briefly, Cleveland City Council did pass legislation to increase the penalties around nuisance activities. We just actually passed that
Yep.
law.
And
And
curfew.
curfew. We increased penalties for nuisance, curfew, and street shutdowns that actually plagued us last year. We're going to give the administration and the law enforcement officials all the tools that they need to. But we also need a call to action for the community.
Yes.
The community needs to be able to hold people accountable. With those bad actors, they need to be held accountable. There need to be tools in place for court watch whenever they do that to the community, to be able to have community members go and be able to tell the judges that this is unacceptable. I would tell you, and I don't know the reasoning why, but there are some judges who don't hold some of these folks. Maybe we might need a different resource center, or maybe we might need a drop-in center,
Yep.
or something like that we can fund and then team them up with people like the Peacemakers Alliance and all of the network of, street outreach teams that are working with folks this week. I had a privilege of working with a gentleman this weekend named Fred Ward, and he introduced me to a group of young people who live in the neighborhood that I serve in Ward 6. We have now are scheduling a cleanup. We're scheduling activities because, I laugh and I know people are going to get a kick out of this, but when I approach the young folks now, they call me Unc. That's a term of endearment for saying you're getting old. So sometimes I have to rely on some of the younger people, as Maisha and others said, and Councilman Starr, who actually might have a little bit more appeal to these guys, and these guys that might look a little rough around the edges so that they can attract people, so that we could get them in the right programs, the right jobs, and make the right kind of role models and goal models for the young people that you're talking about, because they respect those folks that are right adjacent to them. All of us up here have a story. And I could tell you my story were street guys who said you were pretty decent at basketball and you're pretty good at school. We don't want you here, we want you there. And all of us only got here because we have gotten help from other people through Muni League football,
Yep.
through a big sister or a big brother, and people that oftentimes live on the margins of society. But that's the reason why many of us do what we do, because we owe a tremendous debt to the people that we serve to try to save these babies. And that's why I'm proud to stand here with my brother to try to make sure we get this done.
Thank you. Well, thank you all.
So this is planning and planning.
So,
What is the plan for day one?
So today we're going to, this evening at Cleveland City Council, we will introduce a resolution declaring gun violence as a public health crisis, which will go to a vote through my colleagues and their support to pass it. Also, we are declaring May 1st through May 7th as National Gun Violence Survivor Week. We will be hosting an event with mental health, ghetto therapy that will be taking place at Langston Hughes on May 7th at 6 o'clock on East 79th in Quincy, so we can start finding out what is actually going on with individuals to figure out how we tap into their mental capacity to see what is actually going on.
And I think it's powerful, the fact that you see that we have county council here with us today too. Even though it's only one member, one of the things we want to work with is county council so that we have a joint approach, because we know that they also are very, committed to this effort as well. So I'm glad that county council is joining us here, county council on this. All right,
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
appreciate it.